distributor, perhaps online, which can be a little bit risky, or use the broker in your home country to get started, build up some volume, and then go factory direct. So maybe, China isn't for everybody, let's be honest. And if you're small with a customized product, it's very hard to get things done in China. That's the truth. If you have volume, it's a pleasure to do business in China because people factories will jump at the opportunity to work with you. So it's all about volume. Okay, now we talked about some inexpensive tools. Let me give you some free tools. Everybody likes that. So how do I determine if my supplier is legitimate? Well, the first free question is ask your supplier, do you have a quality manual? Can you show me how you manage production on the line? If they don't have one, I guarantee what they will say is, oh, we make pens every day. We know what we're doing. We don't need a written manual to monitor how we make the pens. Turn around and run away. Because what will happen is after Chinese New Year, 20% of their workforce stays on vacation or doesn't come back. A key manager gets sick or moves on. So a factory that's great today can be horrible tomorrow. But if they have a proper written manual for how to run the production, then that manual can train up, in theory, the next round of laborers that come in. So if you want to see what a quality manual looks like, on my website, psschina.com, under Buyer Resources, we have what's called a PQM, which is a Product Quality Manual. It's basically a manual that we use around our assembly center, but it's 50 pages long, so I couldn't bring it to hand out to everybody. But it's free, and you can take a look at it. Then when you ask your supplier, show me your quality manual, and they give you one page, you'll know that maybe that's not enough. Okay, the other thing you can do that doesn't cost it is just ask for references. A lot of us don't do it, but it's so easy just to ask the supplier, hey, tell me a couple of your happy customers. Now, maybe you're worried about competition in the Canadian market. Okay, give me an Australian customer. We're not in competition, but somebody that I can talk to. If they can't do that, even if it's a friend, every factory should have a customer that's at least a good friend. If they don't have that, it's kind of scary. Okay, now I was asked to just kind of freestyle here and give some other tips on common pitfalls and best practices during the supplier selection phase. Also, I wanted to write, before I forget, our booth number is 7S31. So if I don't hit some of the points you want to talk about, please raise your hand during the Q&A a little bit later or come down to the booth. We also have representatives from various service providers that can help you out. So let me go through a couple of my common mistakes. Do you have a purchase order template? I covered that early on, but it's so important it's worth saying again. If you don't have a clear contract that states what you're buying, what is the standard, what is the expected lead time, and warranty terms in advance, good luck negotiating something if it goes wrong. Never in my life, I've had lots of orders missed, delayed. I have lots of quality problems early on in my career, but never once did I have a supplier say to me, Mike, you're right, we misunderstood the quotation. Let us FedEx a couple pallets of replacement parts to the US to keep your customers happy. Never once in my career have I heard that. Now, after I have a contract in place which says if the lead time is compromised by 7 days, for every 7 days I get 2% off, and it's in writing with a company shop on it, it's surprising how suppliers find a way to meet that lead time at the last minute before it ships out. So the contract not only sets the tone, but it gives you some leverage if things go wrong. Speaking of things go wrong, I'm really happy. Sometimes suppliers have done me wrong, and one mistake that buyers make is just to sit back and take it. A lot of us think, okay, China's so far away, what can we do? Fred, if you'd raise your hand, where are you? In the back. So this is my debt collector. When I've had debts owed to me by Chinese suppliers, you can actually hire a third party who will go in and get your money back. Of course, you have to give them 20 to 30%, or maybe a little bit lower for friends, hopefully. And but you can actually recoup your losses if you have that contract. If you don't have a contract, or you just have an email that says send me 10,000 iPad cases, the law and the debt collection agents recovery, they can't do anything. So one mistake is just to not have a contract. The second mistake is not enforce that contract. All right. Early on, an audience member from Australia asked, well, how do you define conformance? And he was telling me, I'm sorry, conformance to your market's standards. And he was mentioning that they're wanting the CE mark, and the supplier said, well, how big do you want the CE mark? Where do you want it on the package? It was obvious that they were just putting it there for sales and marketing. Keep in mind that, well, that may sound unethical, it's not going to get the supplier arrested because you're the importer of record. So if you bring that product into your home country and God forbid it hurts someone or there's a lawsuit or it just falls apart and doesn't work, the lawyers in your country are not going to go after some Chinese supplier that has no assets in your country. They're going to go after you because you're the person that they can find, and it's going to become your problem. So even if the supplier says, don't worry, we're licensed to deal with the Apple logo. Oh, don't worry, our factory has been certified to this standard. Sure, we've dealt with Disney before, and you can put Mickey Mouse on your earphones. Double check all of that stuff, because if maybe they're not trying to trick you, maybe they did have the logo or they own the IP for the Apple. Well, maybe that intellectual property, the range that they had or the timing has ended, and now you're exposed. So anytime you're buying something that has intellectual property issues, copyright issues, and especially conformance with marks, CE, UL, it's up to you to work with the laboratories. Generally, even in America, it's hard for me to go to like a government website and find out what is the standard for importing pens into the US. There's all this paperwork, it's hard. So generally you go to the testing labs in China or your home market and say, look, I'm going to give you the business to do the testing on this, but can you tell me what you should be testing for? And they'll generally work with you. So that's one way to get to the answer about how does my product conform or not. Okay, we talk about scams a little bit. If you're a small buyer and you're going to purchase online, wholesale, it's one thing to come to these trade shows, you meet the supplier, you can feel, are they legitimate? It helps, but then you can go to their factory because you're already in China and you'll see, yes, this is a real office. But when you're purchasing online, especially at the wholesale or distribution level, there are some slick websites out there written in perfect English that are nothing but two guys in a warehouse taking money. In the past 2 weeks, the scam is the same over and over again, and I feel sad because I'm out there trying to preach to people how to avoid it, but because there's so many buyers, not every buyer has a chance to come to my presentation. Some of them just don't know, and especially they always tell me, well, Mike, the order was a few $1,000s. I knew I was taking a risk. Well, but last week, one of these buyers from Europe lost $50,000 on a really simple scam where the supplier wasn't really a supplier, had a nice website, took the initial payment, the deposit was $50,000, so the order was much more, and then the supplier wasn't really a supplier, they closed the bank account and disappeared. So what do you do? My tip is make sure that the company name on the contract matches the bank account information, matches the name on the factory or the office or whoever you're dealing with. So if those are the same, you'll have a fighting chance, God forbid anything goes wrong. In the case I mentioned before, the bank account was a personal name. The factory didn't really exist. So it was like watching a train wreck, and it happens over and over every day. So make sure that at least you guys in this room, when you place an order to a factory, you use a purchase order, and that the factory name is the same as the name on the bank account. And if it's not, they better have a very good reason, and perhaps you can structure your payments so that you pay them after delivery, or at least after the inspection is taking place. Okay, worried about your intellectual property?